Welcome everyone. So today we are going to talk about pandas and how we can use pandas for web scraping. Now pandas is not actually built for web scraping. It's built for data handling, a lot of other things, but basically data handling. So it can handle a huge amount of data and can do wonders. But that's for some other day. So today we are going to talk about one specific function and that will be very useful for web scraping. But there is a catch. Pandas is actually not built for web scraping, so we will be looking at specific examples and we will be talking about specific scenarios where this web scraping with pandas is actually possible. So, pandas web scraping will only work when you actually have HTML tables. So, let's start with the simple example. By the way, as always, my video is inspired from a real life web scraping freelance project. So it was actually posted on one of the freelancing sites and it was not about Wikipedia. We will come to the site, but let's start with Wikipedia. So if we look at Wikipedia and if you go to any page which contains a table, and if you look at the markup, so you can look at the markup in multiple ways. So the simplest and most reliable is going to the source. So just right click and go to view page source. So let me zoom this up and just look for Control F, opening. So what we are looking for is, just a second, let me put it on a notepad so that it's visible. So this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a table element directly like this. So this Firefox find window is very small, but still we can see that we have a table here, right here. So I can zoom this up further and you can see that we have a table. So if you have actually a table element, then pandas can help you. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to use a Jupyter notebooks. So let me open a new one. So we are working with Jupyter notebooks because if you want to execute small script, very few lines, it can be very efficient. We can quickly see the results what we are doing. So let me show you how it works. So first you need to import pandas. So let me zoom this up further. So import pandas as PD. So this is the convention. So by the way, you can use any of your favorite editor if you want to use, let's say, PyCharm, or if you want to use VS Code or even IPython command line is perfectly fine. So import pandas as PD. So that is the first step. And then there is very useful function read HTML. So this function will take care of reading two things. It can take two parameters, two kind of parameters. It can take a file or a URL which actually contains tables, or it can take entire table string, you know, a string which contains the table element. It can process both of these. So in case of a Wikipedia, it's quite simple actually. We can simply take this URL and come back here and we can simply pass this like it. That's all we have to do. And I'm going to execute, and what it will do is it will return all the tables from this particular URL. So as you can see, there are a lot of tables. So let's store them in a variable, and that way we will be able to actually see So welcome Ram, and glad that I help you. So let's hope that this video is also useful for you. So what it is going to return is a list of data frames. So if you know pandas, even the very basic, then most of the times pandas is going to work with data frames. So data frames are, you can think about data frames as tables with lot of features. So these are basically tables, but they have lot more features. So this read HTML function, this is going to return a list of data frames. All right, so let's store it and let's call it a df list. Okay, so now we have a list of data frames, right? So let's check. Let's look at the length. Let's look at how many data frames we have. So we have total 3 data frames. So what we can do now is there are multiple ways to handle it. So I'm going to start with the simplest one. Okay, so oopsie. So just like normal Python list, we can use indexes. Okay, and let's look at the first data frame. So the first data frame is just a table which contains this information. This article does not cite. So basically this is not what we want. So let's look at the second one. And that's it. That is the information that we were looking for. So this is a list of top book list. And this is the table. So we wanted publisher, name and published. So this is the information that we wanted. And now just with 1, 2 and 3 lines of code, let's exclude this. So just with 3 lines of code, we have the complete information available here, right? So it's very easy. So this was the basic example. Now let me tell you about the job posting that I actually saw, and let's work on that. So that is going to be little bit challenging. So let's see. So this is the site. All right. And the freelance job posting was very simple. The posting was to create a script and where they will put this 4-letter code. So for example, this one has TSLA for Tesla. And what they wanted was this table. All right. So the first statement, the first step of any kind of web scraping is always to look at the site. Okay. So let's press F12 and let's use the inspector and see what it is, whether it is actually a table or it is a div tag styled with CSS so that it appears like a table. All right, so let's look at that, what it is. And if I click here, we can quickly see that this is actually a table. Perfect. So let me zoom this and show it to you. So we can see that this is actually a table. So now we have a table, so we should be able to get this. Okay. So let's copy this and let's use the same method. So what we are going to do, pd.read HTML, and let's pass in this URL and let's see what is the result. So it's going to take some time and we have HTTP error. So we did not get any table, and let's scroll down and we can see this error 403 forbidden. And if you have been doing any kind of web scraping, you know that if you are getting error in the range of 400, that means there is something wrong that you are doing with the headers. You are not sending the user agent or any other headers that are missing. Now the problem with this pandas read HTML is that you cannot send custom headers. So this is the problem or the limitations. And I did look up into the documentation, and there was this statement that we are not going to support it. So at least in the coming future, there is no provision, and there will be no way of sending headers. So we need to find a workaround. So what is the workaround? Remember in the beginning, I told you that a read HTML can take a URL, a local file path, or a string that contains the table. All right. So what we can do is we can actually get the string that contains the HTML. And how do we get that? We can use a request library. So the workaround is that we will use a request library. So request library can actually handle this kind of GET request. It can send custom headers. So we will send custom headers, we will get the HTML, and once we get the HTML, we will pass on that raw HTML to pd.readHTML. All right. So it may sound a little confusing at this moment. So I'm going to hide this for now. All right. So let's do this. We will understand by example. So first of all, you do need to execute pip install request if you have not done. By the way, if you're working with pandas, that means you already have request installed, so it should not be a problem. So it's taking time. So anyway, I know that request is installed. So let's move on to the part where we are actually going to send the request. Okay. So let's start with some basics. First of all, this URL, let's store this in a variable. Okay. This is the one thing that we are going to do. The second thing is headers. So we can take all of the headers. So this is the site, right? So what we can do is in the network tab, but whatever. So what we will do here is we'll start with user agent. Okay. So we can take all the headers and we can pass on that. But usually if you just send the user agent correct, that should take care of the problem. So this has executed and it has confirmed that the request library is installed. By the way, if you have not yet noticed, I started this pip install command with exclamation mark. So if you want to do that directly from Jupyter Notebooks, you can do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create one dictionary. All right. And this dictionary, the key is going to be user agent, and the value is going to be the one which we just copied. So this is our headers dictionary. So if you want to print it, we can verify this by printing headers, and we can see that this is just a standard dictionary. All right. So now what we are going to do is we are going to create the get method. We are going to call the request dot get method, and we are going to supply two things. Number one, we are going to supply the URL. So this is the URL where we want to go. And number two, what we are going to supply is this headers that we just created. And this is another optional parameter. So I've pressed tab. I'm waiting for autocomplete. So it auto-completed, and by the way, the parameter name and our local variable name is same, but it doesn't matter. So now if I execute this, we should get a response. Okay. So let's store this in a variable. Okay, I did not import. So I'm going to import request library. Import request library. So now it is imported and this execute just fine. Now if we look at the response, we should have a 200 and we have a 200 here. And if we look at response.text, we should have the complete HTML. Perfect. So now that we have the complete HTML, what we can do is, so let me scroll it, let me hide it, and let me insert one more cell here. So pd.readHTML function. So as I mentioned earlier, pd.readHTML should be able to process this text and give us all the data frames inside it, all the tables inside this. So see, now we have a lot of tables. So let's look at the length. Okay, so there are 32. So now if we look at all the 32 tables one by one, so this is going to be a little bit challenging. Okay, we have to look. So what we need to do is we need to fine tune the selector, because there was one bad thing about read HTML is that we were not able to pass the headers. But the good thing is we have the ability to pass some selectors. So it will look for specific tables. So let's come back to this page and let's try to create one selector. So let's try to find something which is unique for this table. So let's come here and we see that there is this class snapshot table 2. Okay. So let's see if this snapshot table 2 is more than 1 or not. So I've just opened there are many ways to check the selector. So I've taken the quick approach. I press Ctrl U to look at the source code. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to look for snapshot class table 2. And if you can see here in the bottom, it says 1 of 1 match. So there is absolutely one instance where this class is applicable. So what we can do here is now we can, in the read HTML, what we can do is we can pass one additional parameter. All right. So let's do it like this. So this is going to be attrs. Okay. Now, by the way, if you forget, you can always press you can always press a shift tab. Okay. So this signature will appear, and if you press it 2 times, this will come up in this form where it will be sticked. So it will be sticky and you can go through the documentation. What is the signature? What are the things it can expect and all that. And here what we are going to do here is we are going to pass the attrs. So we are going to pass attrs, and the dictionary that we are going to pass is class equal to, not equal to, colon snapshot table 2. And we are not going to use the reserved keyword because we are passing the string. So that should not be a problem. And let's store it in a df list. And now we should have only one. So if we check the length of df list, we have only one. So that means that if we look at the first item, what we have is exactly what we were looking for. Index S&P 500. Second line is market cap 670 billion. So let's come here and verify that this is what we have. Index S&P 500, market cap 670 billion. So this is exactly the data that we needed. Obviously, all the companies will not look for, they will want either CSV or Excel or JSON or something of that sort. Now this is where Panda shines again. What you can do is we can simply call to underscore and I just press tab and just look at the options. You can paste it to clipboard, very rare use, but CSV, Excel, the HTML, JSON, so these are very useful functions, right? So for example, if I want to create a CSV file, we can simply say to CSV, okay? And here we need to give the name of the CSV file. So let's call it Tesla dot, okay, let's call it Tesla live.csv and execute this, and that's it. Let's come here, refresh this. And here we have it, Tesla live.csv. So this is the file that we just created. There is one problem, the headers are not correct. So this is not something we want in this particular scenario. And this indexing 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, that is something again we don't want. So for that, the solution is very simple. Whenever we are sending it to CSV, we need to pass two things. We need to set the index to false. So we need to set index to false, and we also need to set header to false. Okay, so once we execute this again, we will have a clean CSV. Now the same approach, so this was the overall approach. So the same approach can also be applied to few other sites. For example, so this is the FDIC failed bank list. So if you look at the source code, this is again another table. So what you can do is copy this URL, okay, come to the terminal or your Jupyter notebook and just call to, or rather read HTML and pass it on. And we have a name error, df not defined, because it should be pd dot read HTML. And if everything is fine, if the user agent is not a problem, we should directly have the result, and we directly have the result. So we have all 563 rows and 6 columns. Similarly, there was one more site that I found. Now this one is again related to quant hockey. So this one, let's try this one. Okay, so let's see. So this one also worked. So if a site is not stopping you because you are not passing the correct header, you can directly use read HTML. If there is a site which is stopping you because you are not passing in the header, you can use the request library, pass in the header, get the HTML, and then from that HTML you can create your data frame. So that was all I wanted to show you today. So I hope. So that's all. I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.